2 minutes in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sikkim Roundtable. This is brought to you by Boom Live, that is boomlive.in. We're fact checkers and we address and try to counter misinformation. And we're based in Mumbai and Delhi. And we work out of India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. And today, pardon me, is our seventh roundtable dedicated to a state in the northeast of India. And on the 7th of December last year, actually, we held our first conversation. And so far, we've done 11 of these. As I said, seven dedicated to states. This is the seventh state. So it's either been focused on a state in the Northeast or we've focused on an issue that affects all states in the Northeast. So we've done data related to the Northeast. We've done research. We've done fact checking, all of that. We also did an event in Guwahati. So all of this is part of our Northeast Facts Network. And for those of you who are joining for the very first time, one of these roundtables, my name is HR Venkatesh. I'm the Director Training and Research here at Boom Live. And I'm joined by the person who leads this project, the Northeast Facts Network. That's Dr. Sabina Yasmin Rahman, who's been in touch with all the speakers. Pardon me. I also have a winter throat, so apologies for that. We also have with us our research assistant, Shulu Diu. And we have our senior producer and fact checker, Divya Chandra, here with us. So here's how the next 1 hour to 75 minutes will unfold. Each speaker will speak for about 3 to 4 minutes about them, that is essentially about their work and how that intersects with the state of Sikkim. In the second round, each speaker will talk about what we often get wrong about Sikkim. When I say we, I mean people from outside Sikkim, people from outside the Northeast as well. And the idea is that I'll speak as little as possible and get out of the way. So this really isn't a panel discussion, it is a roundtable. And I said, of course, each speaker will speak for about 3 to 4 minutes in the beginning. I will also do an introduction, so you don't have to reintroduce yourself. That's the idea, so that you can plunge on directly into your work area. Um, so if that is the case, and then after that, the third round, we're going to go to questions and answers, and we'll also get in comments from the speakers about topics that they wanted to talk about, but they couldn't get the time to do so. Right. So let's quickly uh, introduce the stellar panel we have today. We'll start with Mailmeet Lepcha, who's going to be our first speaker. She's a conservationist and indigenous activist, and she'll be talking about the Tista River conservation, among other things. We have Kailash Pradhan, architect and social activist, who will speak on architecture and urbanism in Sikkim. We have Rosie Chamling, professor and dean, School of Languages and Literature, Sikkim University, who will speak on gender and folk cultures. We have Karma Paljor. When I started speaking, he hadn't yet joined, but I think he's joining anyway. He's the editor-in-chief of East Mojo and a co-founder of ATVI and Infotainment. He'll speak on regional media. We have Pema Wangchuk, consulting editor at Summit Times, who will speak on media in transition. In fact, between Pema and Karma, I have a lot of questions, so that part might end up becoming a bit panely, but we'll see how it goes. Then we have Naresh Subba, assistant professor, Department of Political Science, Sikkim University. Marginality of the Limbu community is one of his focus areas in the Eastern Himalayas. But that's not the only thing. Of course, when I gave that one-line description, I do know that this is just one dimension of your multiple dimensions of your interests. So we will get to that as we speak. Let me just quickly introduce our very first speaker, Mailmeet, before handing the floor over to her. Mailmeet is a Lepcha indigenous human rights defender and an environmental activist who's been working hard to protect our homeland. Again, it's the winter throat. My apologies. From large dams over 2 decades in Zongo Valley, Sikkim. She's a general secretary of Affected Citizens of Tista, the only organization in Sikkim fighting against the onslaught of the river dams. She's also the president of the Sikkim Indigenous Lepcha Tribal Association, which works exclusively for the Lepcha indigenous community on Sikkim on issues including land rights and empowering women, youth, shamans, and students. She's an entrepreneur. She also runs a small homestay and she practices indigenous farming, cultivating different varieties of millet. She also promotes indigenous farming practices, and we'll hear more from her. It's over to you, Mayalmeet.
Okay, Khamri everyone, and good evening to all the panelists and all the viewers. Firstly, I would really want to appreciate the initiative of the round table, and it is very. I really feel that it is necessary that we should have a talk on different issues. So to talk about myself, like as my introduction has already been done, I started being an activist very young, and I really didn't uh, thought that I'll end up becoming an activist. But when I was in first year college, and when I heard about dams which is coming up in the region, especially the Zongu, that really, inside my heart, like it really made me very scared that I could really, in very young age, I could really imagine if such big hydropower dams comes, what will happen to our landscape. So this is how I joined ACT as a member, and like everybody in the this in Sikkim, I've must have heard and they know, and even Pima Wangchuk sir, who is in the editor in like from now, one of the press, he had covered he has covered a lot about our struggle, and even the Sikkim Express also. So we started in 2007. That is the historical hunger strike, which took place for 915 days. So where we could, scrap 4 hydropower project, which was inside the Kanchenjunga National Park. So this is how I started my journey. So apart from my activism and environment, I work for this. I could see I was traveling a lot, to different areas in West Sikkim, South Sikkim, and East Sikkim. Apart from North, I could see a lot of lecture community. They are like not able to understand. They don't know about their rights, especially the land rights. Like a lot of they have problem within within the family, within other community. So we are taking as an organization taking initiative of giving them a free legal services, writing a petition for them, and taking to different authorities like SDM, DC. Now we have done a very a good, like we have solved a lot of good cases. So these are the things that I've done, and basically like we work with, like I have thought that we need a lot of awareness among our community, and apart from organized like environment, we have not kept with like there were a lot of allegations that the ACT has made our issue very inclusive, only Zongu, only Lepcha, but that was not the, I don't know where we went wrong, but like we were not that. It like environment itself is like it could impact everybody, and it is impacting everyone in Sikkim. So we went, like we did 2016, we did this free flowing rivers. We went to West Sikkim, we went to South Sikkim, we went in and around Gantok, giving this free, the campaigning awareness about the free flowing rivers, and about the dam, about the impact of dam, what is going to happen, and what is our responsibility, because we are the future. So whatever happens, we will be the one who is going to see the disaster. So these are the things that I'm working on. So I'll just, and this is what I really want to share till now.
Thank you so much, Mayalmeet. We'll come back to you when we get to rounds 2, 3, and maybe 4. Let's bring in our next speaker. After completing his bachelor's in architecture in 1990, Kailash Pradhan started his private practice from 1991 till 2014. He's been working as a partner at Studio Interweave since 2014. Pradhan also stood for elections as an independent candidate for the Gangtok Municipal Corporation in 2021 and the Sikkim Legislative Assembly in 2024. He's also a founding member of Architects of Sikkim. With that, it's over to you, Kailash.
Thanks. So I'll just jump in. Time is short. I was wondering what I would say, and what organization I work for, and I don't really work for an organization as such. I'm a practicing architect. I have a partner, and I'm also part of some other organization, but that's not exclusive. So what I thought is I'll just quickly trace my journey. So when I came back here in 91, so yeah, I had a fairly decent architecture education. I studied in SEP. So And I thought that Sikkim would be a good place to, I mean, I wanted to come back and work here, but then I also had something very substantial cut out, which was to try and seek out architectural language, which is appropriate for contemporary Sikkim, So that itself is a lifetime's work. So I thought like, okay, I had my plate full, and then, I would kind of like sink my teeth into that and jump in. But it happened like after a couple of years, there was an uneasy feeling, things were not right. And I started getting the feeling like an ostrich buried its head in the sand. So then, like I was kind of like indulging, it felt like an indulgence architecture, like I wanted to create like beautiful buildings. But at the same time, when you looked around, it was like a lot of things were kind of not going right. And at that time, you're kind of young, you couldn't put a finger on it. But overall, like it felt like the government didn't have any kind of a long-term thinking, and that there was kind of not enough capacity, or what it was, there wasn't kind of any kind of planning or policy, like the hydropower projects came up all of a sudden without any hydropower policy, for example, like, so something felt like amiss and something was not right, but so you were too young to kind of like have solutions. So in a way, like I went on like a rebel kind of a path, like, so this is not happening, but at the same time, you don't know what is right. So in a way that upset a lot of like stuff that actually I came up with. So towards after about 10 years, like a lot of new like younger architects started coming in. So we started off Architects of Sikkim. We thought that let's get together, let's talk about like Gangtok is turning into a city now. And we did a few workshops with a lot of people. And in those workshops, one of the things which came up was that, okay, Gangtok is a difficult place to plan, like urban design-wise, because it's got like very steep terrain. It's got like very high rainfall. It's got like a very weak geology, as well as it has, it's a seismic zone. So a lot of stuff which is difficult, like in Gangtok as it is. But then on top of that, in the workshops, it came out that a lot of people, like we had a lot of issues with getting through to the government, because this word kept coming up, this ego problem, ego problem. I thought it was just a passing thing, but it came up in every workshop. So it's something that which later on, like we kind of recognize, and now we we know it's a big issue. So, and also the government people are not really open to listen to like local people. I don't know why. So, but as soon as like people come from Delhi, like these big planning multinational firms, they come in. So they are kind of like, they welcome them. So, and it's been like, I've seen, at least in my life, it's been 3 decades. And before that also, there were planning efforts which happened. And there are like half a dozen, like 10 of these master plans which are made. And we go in with a lot of diligence. We do a lot of like public consultation and stakeholder consultation during those meetings. But then in the end, like it hasn't made any impact on the ground at all. Like so there is this kind of a problem with not being able to plan.
Right.
And so sorry, like just give me some.
Yeah, if you can wrap up in 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, so I had some ideas about planning myself, So I was an exchange student in Zurich in Switzerland. I'd seen like they'd use ropeways as part of like the public transportation. So I had been kind of like thinking about this, and recently now traffic is a huge issue in Sikkim, and I know that the government they kind of like doing a ropeway scheme, and then for me it was that we don't have a plan for Gangtok. We don't have a kind of a mobility plan. We have a traffic issue, so we need to both look at both of these things together, and like we can come up with something. So that was what my those two elections were about. That you are not getting audience with the government. So let's go to the people. Let's see whether, like we can broadcast like these ideas, because it seems like there is some kind of a mismatch between the problems and the solution. So anyway, so I'll wrap up now. There's a lot more to talk about, but
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much for that quick introduction, though. Let's bring in Rosie Chamling now, who's a professor and the dean of the School of Languages and Literature, Sikkim University, Gangtok. Her areas of interest are literary and cultural studies, with a particular focus on gender and folk cultures of Sikkim. She's been documenting the oral folk literatures from Sikkim by organizing translation workshops and a series of workshops at Sikkim University. Her most recent publication is an edited translation of folk tales from Sikkim, published by the Writers Workshop, Kolkata 2024. Rosie, it's over to you.
Uh, Thank you, and good evening to everyone. A little bit of disclaimer in the beginning. I would want to clarify that I'm basically an academic and not an activist. So when I'm here to speak on gender, I'll be speaking from, based on my personal experiences and my personal encounters that I face, gender disparity as I negotiate between the personal and the personal divide. Now, when we speak about Sikkim and when we speak about women, and why only Sikkim when we talk about the Northeast in general, it is generally assumed that the Northeast has a better gender parity. However, what I would like to make clear here is that it is very, very disillusional because uh, I've seen during the process of my teaching, because inside the classroom I'm teaching gender theory, but when it comes to gender in practice, we see that there is a disconnect between the classroom, within the academic spaces, and the outside world. So, if you look at the general scenario of Sikkim, if you look at the Sikkim Human Development Report, it gives a very beautiful picture of Sikkim as where women have better indicators in terms of economic empowerment, social and other factors. But then we see that there has been a national family health survey, and then we've seen the harsh truth that there have been several a high incidence of domestic violence cases during the COVID-19 period. So, and then these cases were not reported. So that is a great area of concern for us because you see, on the one hand, we are saying that Sikkim is a state where you do not have such cases, but on the other hand, which is represented to the world outside as where there are no domestic cases, or where women have a high level of literacy rate, and which definitely is telling upon a better social position that women occupies generally. But if you look at, if you look at this situation from the inside, we see that there must have been something which has, which has uh, caused such data to come from the National Family Health Survey, which tells us that that women definitely are marginalized, within the domestic spaces. So how do I connect gender and folklore? Is basically to see how, um, uh, how gender, you see, is represented through through folk literatures. Because when we talk about folk cultures, it's essentially about, it's essentially relegated to marginal literature, because folk, which means, it talks about a pre-literate society. It talks about when, it talks about, it does not talk about a literate society. So that's why it's the engagement that is to be done with, with the plebeian folk people, the common people, not the elite, or it could also have to do with children who do not have, much voice. So, when I'm engaging with these folk cultures, I'm essentially trying to show you, to show how the folk cultures can be, narratives which voices the concern of the marginalized, the children, the women, folk, and how these voices get submerged in the larger cacophony of, of the mainstream discourse that, that governs our everyday lives. So, uh, when we are talking about Sikkim, we know that, basically we are, it's dominated by tribal, tribal social structure. So we generally follow a matrilineal, hereditary tradition. So our lives are governed by these customary laws. But
Right.
then it is also seen that, whenever we're talking about women and, and gender, uh, women do not occupy decision making positions. So that's where my concern also is about, because despite, state interventions in terms of, say, reservation of women in politics, or reservation of jobs for women, or providing scholarship and stipends for women who want to, who want to pursue their studies, but despite these, these aids, Like, what is it that cannot be brought to the fore? And do we really have the divide between the private and the public spaces? So if so we need to understand what happens in the in the private spaces of the of the houses, for instance. And those needs to be addressed. I think I would like to end my argument here.
Right. Thank you so much, Rosie. We'll dig deeper into this as time permits. We've halfway through our introductory, remarks. We've had three speakers, so let's bring in the next three, starting with Karma Paljor, who's an Indian journalist and television news anchor. His career as a media professional, in fact, began in 2001, and since then he's been associated with some news channels, CNBC, CNN, IBN, CNN News 18. I've been his colleague, in fact, on a number of occasions. And he's an old friend of mine. He's also received several awards for his role as a reporter and for his coverage of natural disasters. Since then, he co-founded ATVI Infotainment, a content creation company, in 2018. His business verticals of that include East Mojo and ATVI Studios. It's over to you, Karma.
Thank you. Thank you, Venkatesh. I really don't know where to start. But, Northeast has always been about narratives. There's a certain narrative that the rest of India wants to believe about not just Sikkim, but, the entire region that is Northeast. And somehow it's all been about how exotic it is, how beautiful it is, how terribly uncharted virgin territory, this and that. And you seldom hear them really talk about the conflict within, the issues within. And as some of the speakers have highlighted earlier, this region is not as plain, as simple, as exotic as most of the rest of India want to believe. And here I am now, back to my roots to be able to do that. It's been about 7 years since I came back, really. I would say about 5 years where I really put my foot down and started traveling and doing the stories and meeting the people. And I think I have only scratched the surface because there is so much more to do. And as far as my state is concerned, I would still say that I have not been able to do much in terms of the kind of stories that need to be done from my state. So the next step of my career, while focusing on the Northeast, would also be to a large extent focusing on telling stories from Sikkim. The size of Sikkim may be small, the population may be very, very insignificant to the rest of India, but there are some terrific stories to be told. And by terrific stories, I mean the good and the bad. There's a good side to it which needs to be highlighted, but the bad side needs to be told more. There are so many issues in Sikkim that nobody wants to talk about because it's uncomfortable. They will not touch it. So here I am, I think, positioned in the right way to be able to do that. I have spent some time, I think over a year now, looking at the difference I can make, looking at the issues that I can take on. I think the next year will define the role that East Mojo is going to play in highlighting a lot of these stories.
Right. Thanks so much for that, Karma. And I mean, I know that Karma spent a large part of his career in New Delhi, and it kind of parallels my career as well because I've spent most of my time outside my original, my origins, which is Karnataka and the city of Bengaluru. And I bring in an outsider perspective, even though I'm an insider. So I think those are some parallels. And from that, I think we'll go to someone who's been focusing and doing deep dives on the state of Sikkim as a journalist. Let's bring in Pema Wangchuk, currently working as the consulting editor at the Summit Times. He's been working as a journalist in Sikkim since 1994. That simple line is the line is simple, but it shows that a very deep, in-depth relationship with Sikkim. So, Pema, it's over to you.
Uh, Hi, yeah, thanks for this. Uh, when someone from your office got in touch that they're going to do this roundtable, I mean, we are always up for discussions, but I was at loss on what are we going to talk about. Um, and this is one theme that I've been thinking about and discussing with a lot of younger journalists a lot nowadays, media and transition. Because I'm a dinosaur, right? 94. So I started with print. I am still with print primarily. But what we are noticing increasingly is, and this is not unique to Sikkim, I think it's true for the Northeast, all the Northeastern states, and generally in the mainland as well, where print is kind of dying. It doesn't have the kind of people writing or reading like you had at one time. And what we are missing out on that, I feel, is there is no one who's really explaining things because print has now been replaced by the online media. And the online media, I mean, talking about Sikkim, is primarily Facebook. I mean, it's not even YouTube or Instagram so much, or even websites. Websites never really took off in Sikkim. It's primarily on Facebook. So what's happening there is you get a lot of updates. You'll come to know about what's happening. If there's a traffic jam, there's an accident, there's a political speech, there's a political rally, press conference. All of that is happening a lot, but there is really, I mean, they've not managed to understand the medium on how to explain issues. And even discussions like this are not very common. They just don't get the traction, right? You want those flames at the bottom, scary headlines, background music in your introductory 10-second video or whatever. So that is what is happening. And I think what I'm also increasingly seeing is that now that people are getting their information or their news on smartphones, news is in competition with every other distraction that the smartphone brings, right? I mean, they can just scroll and be on Netflix or even YouTube and not be on your on whatever news you're putting there. So that I think is the big challenge. Having been in print, what I noticed is because we had some senior journalists in Sikkim in print earlier, and when you're writing, I mean, you know that, right? I mean, that's the medium where when you're writing, you have to like you cannot just really wing it like I'm doing right now, right? When it's video and audio, you can like just ramble on. You can't do that with print. So whenever something big happened in Sikkim, you had a lot of resource available here by way of journalists who knew what was happening and who could explain it to the outside world or to the mainland, so to speak, right? Which you don't. The current kind of the transition that I'm talking about right now is that, I mean, this vacuum that has been created has not really been filled yet. I mean, Karma is doing an interesting thing with East Mojo. I mean, like he said, if he's planning things for Sikkim, that will be exciting to look for in the next 1 year. But the people working here have not really figured out the medium yet. Just to end with one point, I mean, why I say that's an issue is because legacy media we all have problems with. I mean, but it had its role. So what now there are no gatekeepers. So anyone with a smartphone can start a page and become a journalist and have a news platform, right? But what they cannot do is invest in training themselves or inform on research, because when it becomes a one-man, one-camera person team, then you're very limited in what you can invest by way of doing the bigger stories, planning stories, things like that. So that's what is an issue facing us right now. I mean, I'd be really interested to see what the other consumers of news from these parts have to say on that. Thanks.
We'll get into it for sure. I mean, the whole transition from the mass media model to a personalized algorithm-driven model is something we're all dealing with in the journalism space. On that note, let's bring in our sixth speaker today. Dr. Naresh Subba is an independent researcher and joined Sikkim University recently as guest faculty in political science. Earlier, he completed his MPhil PhD from the Center for East Asian Studies, JNU. Apart from his core area of expertise, that is Japan-India relations, he has interests in the regional history, specifically the Eastern Himalayas and various other regional issues. And he's keen to work with these issues as well. It's over to you, Naresh.
Thank you so much, sir, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me a brief introduction. As I said, I'm being one of the concerned citizen from this particular area. These are also one of my interest area. That's why today I'm going to focus. It's a bit of historical, which my community has faced. So it's a kind of that's why I'm today I'm dealing with marginality of Limbu community in Eastern Himalayas. So when I'm going to the history, so history, I'll be going beyond the understanding of nation state or so-called the country as of now. That is how we understand in a present context. So talking about Limbu community, because when we're talking about the whole idea of having this particular roundtable is that it's a kind of fact check, right? So I also thought of giving some sort of clarification amongst the different communities of Sikkim also. So basically, why I'm focusing on history part is basically that in contemporary times now, Sikkim, like people usually understand that Sikkim is considered of Bhutia, Lepcha, and Nepali, right? So that is the major understanding amongst the normal Indians also. So just to point out that that's why the whole idea of bringing the Limbu community in a marginality framework is that, see, if we see the history, then Limbu, along with Bhutia and Lepcha, is one of the indigenous tribe in this particular area. But over the period of time, through its during colonial and post-colonial time also, and during the history writing also, because most of the colonial and the post-colonial writing was mostly focused on this royal family and the one who serves their interest, who serves the writer's interest. So that is the whole point that, and the reason behind talking about all this issue is especially coming people from our community, there is still in some way, they're still learning or not able to be vocal about what is going on. And I think this is also part of our duty being in academics. And I also thought of coming up with some of this clarification. Because when we understand a particular community, then it is a very heterogeneous actually. And talking about identity itself, there is a layer of different layers of identity, right? So when we say Bhutia also, there are 8 other communities which also comes under Bhutia as an umbrella term, right? So there are other just to give you some clarification, within Bhutia there are other community like Chumbipa, Dotapa, Dukpa, Kageti, Sherpa, Tibetan, Tumropa, and Yolmo. So these are certain things that we just try to understand through Bhutia as a one homogeneous, right? But there are other communities which I'm focusing on this. So coming to the point, that marginality of Limbu community, being Limbu being one of the original inhabitants of Eastern Himalayas. And when I'm talking about Eastern Himalayas, I'm going beyond the understanding of this nation state, because there was a existence of Limbuan before this also, and it shared boundary with both the current Nepal, contemporary Nepal, and the current Sikkim also, and India now. Coming to the point that there are 2 historical timeline for the marginalization of Limbu community in this Eastern Himalayas. In the case of Nepal, current Nepal, so-called the Gorkha Kingdom. So especially after the Salt and Water Treaty with Prithvi Narayan Shah in 1774, 100 years down the line, in 1886, there was a Nepali, for example, when I'm saying Nepali, then generally there are other community from the Nepali now. So they used to be the inhabitants within the Limbu one. And Limbu used to have one of the special rights, so-called through the Kipat system. Kipat system is the system which gives the right of land holdings to this particular community. And especially in 1886, the kingdom of this Nepal, not Nepal as such, but kingdom of this Gorkha kingdom, give a verdict that whatever the occupation land which the teenage farmers were occupying, so the king given verdict in favor of this particular teenage farmer. So the Limbus became landless, not landless access, but the land holdings became very less. So in that sense, it gives some sort of marginality in terms of their land rights also. And coming to the point of Sikkim also, in the context of Sikkim, when the Namgyal dynasty was there, yes.
Right.
Can I
Yeah, just
wrap up?
finish your point
Okay,
in the.
Yeah. Sure. Coming to the point of Sikkim, the first British officer, J.C. White, who appointed was Brit- who was appointed by the British as first political officer. So he came and he appointed a council, and while making this council, he appointed two brothers. One is Khangsa Devan, another is Podong Lama, along with Shiv Devan also. So they were actually this particular council, along with British first political officer, and this council was actually a kind of anti-Chogyal. So they are the one who suggest to bring lots of Nepali migration from the Ispal Gorkha kingdom. That's why it happens. So that's why, in order to counter that particular huge migration in Sikkim, the Chogyal drafted a particular resolution, so-called Revenue Order Number 1, in 1897. So if we see the timeline, it is almost around the same time that which has given the safety to the Bhutia and Lepcha community, but it doesn't give the same thing to the Limbu community. So in that sense, it gives some sort of marginalization over the period. Because in the context of Sikkim, it is only Lo Men Chongsum. Lo means the low pass, the current Bhutias. Men means Lepcha. And Chong means Subba. So these are the three signatory members who first signed Lomen Chongsum as a treaty to form the modern nation state in the state of Sikkim now in 1663. Anyway, these are also very consistent in terms of timetable, but we can discuss further. So these 18.
Leave it at that, Naresh. We can come
Yes,
back to it.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. We'll come to the discussion later part, because since it's a history part, I think I might be going too far.
Yeah, it would,
Yeah.
we had
Sure.
time. Right. So, we've come to the end of the opening section. It's been, what, 40 minutes? We have another 30 minutes, maybe, I don't know, or a little more, depends on, we usually stretch these things on to 90 minutes. It all depends on, of course, our appetite to do so. We're also missing Karishma Lepcha, an anthropologist at Sikkim University, who couldn't make it to this discussion due to a family emergency. We wish her the very best. So let's get to the next section, which we usually title, and for each of the roundtables, it's pretty much the same title, which is, what we get wrong about Sikkim. So when I say that, this includes what other people from the Northeast or from West Bengal, really, neighboring state, what they don't realize about Sikkim, that's one. But also what people from the rest of India, that is mainland India, so to speak, or the rest of the world don't understand about Sikkim, or what we get wrong about Sikkim. And let's try to move this along a little faster. Let me just bring in the same order, or I'll mix it up a little bit. Mayalmeet, and then Rosie, and after that Kailash. So Mayalmeet, what do we get wrong about Sikkim?
Like particularly wrong about Sikkim is like I see like tourism, okay? Like they like Sikkim supposed to be very cool and very like a tourist destination. But I really feel that it is responsibility for people who coming from the mainland people or from Bengal or for tourists. It is their responsibility also to take care of this place. Like people who comes they throw plastics everywhere, and like basically the tourists, they're so noisy. They speak and other thing is like, as my lamb experience, like telling my experience in homestay. So people who like when we are starting some alternative, because we started this homestay in Zongo just to counter the government that we have an alternative. If you're talking of revenue and development, it's not that the hydropower will just bring a development, but we just want to like we as an ACT, we're not just protesting the government policies, but we are in fact giving their other alternatives that we can do. Because if you see, Zongo is a very, very beautiful, rich in biodiversity, flora and fauna. And if you see, like, it's like we can still sell those without selling, without destructing the whole environment. And other thing that I wanted to say that the ecology that we see, the geographical area that we see across Sikkim and other part of Sikkim is like, they are not just mountain in terms of, like, I'm talking about perspective from the, from Lepcha, or in like people who are Bhutia also. These are like our family, we worship Mount Kanchenjunga, we worship this two rivers, River Tisa and Rangi. These are the, the policymakers and the state governments itself, they should see that they do not see these things as in capital. We worship them, we are like, they are like family, we cannot separate. And there is no, when they talk about compensation, they just come back, and at the end they just say we can compensate. But like and how they can compensate our beliefs, because our belief is that after we die, our soul has to travel from this river, and it has to go to the Umzulang, that is a soul resting place, which we believe it is at the foothills of Kanchenjunga. So when the hydropower dams come, when this river gets diverted inside the tunnel, so how are how are these people, that's the thing that I trying and want to say from this platform, that they really need to understand our perspective and our belief system.
Got it. Rosie,
Yeah.
what do we get wrong about Sikkim?
I think the first thing that we get wrong about Sikkim is the fact that there are no gender bias in Sikkim, because going by the statistics, uh, it might look that there are no reports of domestic violence, but then if you go by the reports that are being conducted nationwide, like I've already mentioned, the National Family Health Survey reports that Sikkim has been one of the major states who has indulged in the maximum number of spousal violence during the COVID-19 era. So that's a serious area of concern, because is it a matter of non-reporting that that women's voices are not heard, or not, or silenced for that matter? That's something I would like to point out. The second issue that I would like to others I would like others to know about is the whole idea of gender stereotyping. Because when you talk about Sikkim and Sikkimese, we are generally as peace loving, and very effeminate. You have all kinds of effeminate associations, connotations given to us. So I remember during, one of the selection committee wherein I was a member, the selection chair telling me, "Ma'am, you've been appointed both as as a representative body of a particular class, as well as a representative body of a gender. So you see, how do you negotiate in terms of, suppose if you have to make a selection, would you make class as a criteria? How would you evaluate in terms of of class or gender? Which would you give your priority to? Then I would say, like, class is something that you could always evade or escape by virtue of, say, upward mobility in terms of acquisition of wealth or getting a good job. You could actually transgress your class boundaries. But in case of gender, you see, it's very difficult. Even though you may have, you may acquire a lot of wealth, but definitely you cannot transgress the gender boundaries. That's something that's given to you. So that's another thing, the idea of gender stereotyping. And also, you see, many of many people think that that people from Sikkim are, are so gentle and peace loving, they don't get angry. I heard my very very senior person in chair saying, people here are so nice, they talk so sweetly, they give things with they use two hands to give things. And then they say, and then he turns to the gentleman next to him. He says, "Aapko kabhi gussa nahi aata. I've never seen you lose your temper." So you see, it's kind of effeminizing even our men. So you see, that's something that that makes me quite concerned, because you have to actually break these stereotypical notions about Sikkim and Sikkimese. That's it. Thank you.
Indeed, the whole idea of this section is to list those stereotypes so that we know what to be wary of and what to avoid. Thanks for that. Let's bring in Kailash, and then after Kailash, let's go to Pema, and then after that, I'll bring the rest two speakers. So,
yeah. So what others
wrong? What we
get wrong about Sikkim? My myth touched on it a little bit. For me, it's, the idea of development, like what people feel is development. So which is this, the mainstream economy, and and Sikkim is a small place. It's got a very fragile geology. It's got kind of a lot of microclimates. We have a big altitudinal range, so actually it doesn't seem the right fit. But at the same time, that's what the center says, and that's what the mainland culture is. So it's just coming in. So in addition to that, I couldn't talk about it earlier. I just wanted to touch upon a little bit that, like our approach is also the work that we do in our architecture firm is like, can we grow from the inside out? Because the outside in growth is already happening. And the outside, like the inside out growth, why? Like, and what this might also, why, what the rest of India doesn't understand about Sikkim is something like, for example, when I went to college the first time, like I never heard of the word eve teasing, like so. And the fact that something like that was there, and we don't even have anything like that. So somehow there is this idea that there is a cultural kind of a shift along with the development kind of a model, which is being like thrust upon us, that whatever you're doing is like no good. And then, like we got to replace it with something better. Like, and so we don't value our own stuff. So continuity and change was something that I feel that we need, and something that would help if people understood that. A couple of more things. One is like for the rest of the country is like, how did Sikkim become part of India, And Sikkim, the people who live in Sikkim, we know it or we don't know it, but our fate is being like that we are in a very geopolitically strategic area. We are located in the place which is the easiest route to get to like China and to like to Tibet. And so we became part of India because it was important for India strategically. So in a way, there was a revolution which was happening. It was like a popular revolution. And now a raw agent has written a book about like that whole event at that point, that Raw did choreograph that Sikkim becoming part of India, because that was not part of the movement, like, so something to for you all to know. As an architect, I want to talk a little bit about the habitat that people think, who haven't been to Sikkim before, they might think it's a very romanticized kind of a. There's a lot of like vernacular architecture, and there's like these quaint little villages and all that. Sikkim is not like that, like, so I want to tell you beforehand. It's we are unabashedly. I don't like to use the word modern, because modern also means other things, but it's kind of yeah, very material, very consumerist. You can make out like as soon as you can see the border between West Bengal and Sikkim, like, there is a huge difference. It looks affluent on one side, but that's also because of the money which comes into Sikkim. It's very disproportionate to the surrounding areas. So there's a lot of immigration into Sikkim, because Sikkim is prosperous in that way, like, so there's the whole urbanism shift which is happening. It's a good thing, like, everybody gets like the city is like growing, it's growing fast. There's a lot of jobs and all that happening, but it's also because of a skewed kind of welfare system, to put it in another way. And before I go, just wanted to end with some of the, like, I've been traveling in Northeast recently, and one stark difference that I felt was that, like, we don't understand in Sikkim, people who are living here, that how feudal a past that we've had, like, so we've kind of come through a very like a long feudal kind of history. Whereas on the rest of the Northeast doesn't feel like that, like I was thinking, what was it which was different? So it's much more, in a way, egalitarian. There's less protocol. There's kind of like less celebrity. Like in the Northeast, I didn't see any posters, hoardings of chief ministers. Couple very few. If you come into Sikkim, you'll be surprised, like, like the amount of like stuff that gets people. Yeah. So thanks. That's it.
Right. Thank you for that. I mean, you touched upon a number of areas. I'll follow up on those threads, but let's bring in our last two speakers on what we get wrong about Sikkim, Naresh and then Karma, in that order. Okay, if Naresh, Karma, let's go to you and then bring in Naresh.
Did we get Pema?
No, we haven't got Pema. Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, get Pema first.
You mentioned Pema first. So Pema, please, you and then Naresh and then Karma.
Yeah, I mean, what does the mainland get wrong about Sikkim? Just about everything. And but then what does it get right? I mean, like you said you're from Karnataka. I don't see the mainland getting Karnataka right either. So it's like earlier when I was a younger journalist, reporter, we would have these big issues about how they just don't get it right. They don't understand Sikkim, they misreport, misrepresent, and things like that. And then I have now come to realize that we someone else's, that's their ignorance, right? Someone else's ignorance cannot be a constant topic of conversation for the people here. I mean, that's only part of the question, the part of the problem. To give you an example, I grew up in the plains. My father was in the army, so I grew up every 3 years going to a new place. The only guy who looked like I did. So I've grown up with every slur, I mean, everything possible, like Bahadur, Chinky, everything I've heard, right? And thick skin. But then I'll give you an example. Some years back, when my son was still a very small kid, very naughty, and he was running around in a mall in Calcutta, I think, or was it Bombay? I don't remember. But he was running around in a mall, and this attendant who was really scared that he'll break something, hey, Bhaichung, right? And that kind of got me thinking that what we need really is that instead of complaining about how the mainland does not get you and have these weird stereotypes, we just have to make better introductions. But then Bhaichung retired a few years back, and we've not had anyone else to kind of create that image. But these stereotypes create a bigger problem when it comes to policy interventions, right? Because then Delhi, and it is Delhi, it is the center, it ends up thinking that they have to tell Sikkim how it needs to develop and where its economic prosperity lies. So comes in Heidel, comes in the industrial policy, and the kind opening of jobs which no one in Sikkim is interested in or has the skills for. So that needs to be addressed. The misconceptions they have are right. I mean, the speakers before me mentioned, we've been writing about this for a long time, is about how people have this image of gender, there being no gender discrimination in Sikkim and in the Northeast as well. But beyond, I think, domestic violence or eve teasing, the bigger issue for me, I mean, in a country where Animal and Kabir Singh were the biggest hits of their time, I guess domestic violence, we have to just say ki, bhai, this is a universal problem of our country, right? And Sikkim is no different in that. But the bigger problem in Sikkim is where the identity of women, like we are in the 21st century or whatever it is right now, where the identity of women throughout their lives is tied to the men in their lives. Earlier, it is the father, and then it is the husband. The women in Sikkim do not have an identity of their own, like as in belonging to Sikkim. Their belonging to Sikkim depends upon who their father is, and if they get married, who the husband is. So that is a bigger issue when it comes to gender issues. I think what is required really, when I say, I mean, it's a very casual way of saying we need to make better introductions, but we need to also make very conscious efforts on introducing Sikkim. And I'm sure the rest of the Northeast, Sikkim doesn't understand the rest of the Northeast any better than Delhi does. I mean, most people in Sikkim cannot name the capitals unless they're in grade 4, where they have to kind of like learn it by rote. So they don't know their politics, they don't know their issues, right? In Sikkim either. But I think what is required is a concerted effort, which requires a lot of planning and some collaborations. Why should, like Kailash mentioned, why should Sikkim, which is the youngest part of India, not feature in the political science syllabus? as a chapter on how does a kingdom become a part of a democracy? Like, what was that process like? What happened? Article 371F, things like that, how they were drafted. So I guess that is what is required. And then maybe there will be less people getting, and they'll still get it wrong, right? I mean, in the end, you'll still have some, what was it, a radio jockey in Delhi some years back who cracked a joke about the Nepalese community. I mean, you'll still have those guys who'll do these things. But on our part, I think Sikkim needs to make a stronger effort. The
Yeah.
government spends so much money everywhere. They could easily set up a chair in some universities which does a paper on Sikkim and just
Got it.
adds the rest of the Northeast also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's my rant.
Yeah, well taken points. I mean, you mentioned Karnataka and how the mainland doesn't get Karnataka. I have to admit that the Karnataka doesn't get the mainland either. So it's like mutual. Wherever you go, people don't get each other. Stereotypes are common. I suppose that's a human coping methodology of stereotyping everything and everyone. But here, what we are trying to do with the Northeast Facts Network is really like try to address the willful stereotyping part. For example, Sikkim became a part of India through whatever means the process, in I guess it was in 1975. But I went to school in the second half of the 1980s and the first half of the 1990s, and my school textbooks did not have. I don't remember even Sikkim being counted as one of the northeastern states of India. So how, or there's no explicit mention of Sikkim. So I categorize that as willful, quote unquote misinformation. So that's the thing we're trying to address. And also when we try to put together these roundtables and we ask this question, our question was, who is the audience for this? The audience for this, I believe, obviously cannot be other Sikkim people from Sikkim because that's not, they already know. So the reason we are asking is because there's so much willful misunderstanding about Sikkim out there. On that note, let's bring in Naresh and then Karma. Same question. I mean, I found that when you ask the same question to several people, you get multiple dimensions of the answer as well, which puts
Sure.
together a composite paper, not paper, a composite picture. So Naresh and then Karma, and then we'll go to the next section. Actually, Naresh, while you're switching on your camera and everything, I should just say that please start asking your questions. Jayanta has already asked one question. So please start putting in your questions. And there is no such thing as a bad question, honestly.
So, since I'm talking mostly dealing about the ethnic politics and how things goes wrong, right? Especially during the colonial time and the post-colonial time also. So, actually, I'm addressing the issues of ethnicity, especially my community. So, this is actually the problem with appropriation and the misappropriation about like how you address a particular community in one particular frame. Anyway, any identity or any sort of thing is, according to our constructivist approach, they always say that any ideas can be a temporary for a certain period of time. Likewise, there was a nation, there was a princely state somewhere here. It was there, and now the community identity of a particular, for example, Limbu community was Limbu for a particular period, for particular centuries. Now we have evolved to Nepali as an because of appropriation and the misappropriation. One of the classic example which many historians used to prefer, especially the pro-Sikkimese writers used to quote, unquote, they used to quote this work many times. And it is, anyway, in any book or any sort of academic writing, there is always bias in terms of writing. So in this case, this is Smash and Grab, one of the famous book written in the case of Sikkimese history. It is pro-monarchy. And in this also, because when I'm talking about appropriation and the misappropriation, then here also within this prologue section only, it was written Chong. Chong means actually, let me tell you, Chong, Yaktungba, Limbu, Subba, all are same. Just to give you one understanding, particular understanding. And Subbas are, Limbus are not considered as a Nepali earlier, but now it's a appropriation. That's why I'm telling you when we talk about the particular ethnic history, then this is how we counter, right? So this is also considered, this book also considered as one of the major like academic source of writing, especially when it comes to the Sikkimese history. Then that is how the appropriation come. It has written Chong refugee, which means the refugee was not actually refugee convention is very recent after the Second World War. But here in the very historical context also, they have so easily appropriate that these are the refugees, right? So these are the problem. And as I said, if we come to the contemporary world, and politics and decision making is one of the major problem when it comes to addressing these challenges and the issues within that pertains to Sikkim also. And not just that, if we see the whole global trends also, consumerism is one of the major issues that we are facing now. Because when the Myth was also talking about this thing, there are because of lots of tourism and promotion of tourism and having lots of problem that gives, right. So in one sense, it is also about the political decision that we're making, right. And it is also to do with the policy making, that how things are supposed to be governed. That is also one reason. And another reason is, if you see the contemporary politics in Sikkim, then now they're talking about now our current MP or the current government is saying that they are pushing like 12, 12 left out communities, Nepalese left out communities, to give them ST status. So that means everyone, whoever is from Sikkim, anyway, these are the very common issues that we're facing. But when it comes to policy implementation, that is also one of the major wrong that we're dealing. And that's why I'm saying, when we try to appropriate a certain thing in a certain way, then that also gives a problem. Because for us also, Limbu, by the way, Limbu and Tamang got his status in 2002. And since then, they are fighting for seats, especially in the state legislative assembly also. So the current government is playing politics on this line also, just to garner the vote from the general masses. And now instead, and if you take the candidate, for example, our current chief minister is also from this particular Tamang community, or MP is from my community only, Limbu community only. And these are the wrongdoing actually. How this is how, the some sort of, just to gain its own benefit, they are trying to play around with people's sentiments and come up with different issues. That is also some sort of wrongdoing, I think, when it comes to the policy implementation. And these are the major issue that we are still facing when it comes to the society, and because it will have long-standing impact, I think. But I don't know. People are Sikkim are also so naive that we don't have that protest culture still. So this is still yet to develop a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Category errors is a problem, I think, wherever we go. I mean, just to risk making an oversimplification and a generalization, these category errors play havoc, when they're made. So let's bring in Karma as we close out our second section, and then we'll go into more a general kind of discussion and answering some questions. Karma, what do we get wrong about Sikkim? Or let me rephrase that and say, what did I get wrong about Sikkim when we were colleagues all those while ago?
I think, Maggie, you got everything wrong and you got everything right. So there's always a 50-50 about Sikkim. You know what? Most of mainland, I hate to use this word mainland, rest of the country gets wrong about Sikkim is that it's a beautiful paradise. Most of them go back with pictures of MG Road, which is lit up, which is this urban, very, not so natural place lined with tiles and all, which I find absolutely ugly. But that's how we have grown up to see the change. You should come in the monsoons to see the reality of Sikkim, how difficult it is. The roads are bad. There are landslides everywhere because we are a fragile, geologically a fragile state because the mountains are young and still growing. Are the people of Sikkim happy? Whenever it comes to that, people jump to, how it has one of the highest per capita incomes when it comes to the rest of the country. But I think, that is also wrong. Compared to that, people, whether people are not happy, are happy or not, we are not, because we have one of the highest suicide rates. Maybe it's due to the kind of population we have. When it comes to substance abuse, when it comes to alcoholism, again, it is among the top 10 in the country. So there are so many things that the rest of India does not know. It's not simple. Sikkim is a small state. And as Naresh has been, talking about his community, there are so many communities. Hence, there are a lot of complications. There are a lot of issues which the rest of the country doesn't know. And the only thing that the rest of the country wants to focus on, as far as Sikkim, is two of the narratives that the earlier governments have tried to run. That is, it's a beautiful state, best for tourism, come to Sikkim, wonderful. Second is it's all organic. It's the first organic state, first this, first that. So those are the things that we slowly need to get right and tell the audience from outside the real picture.
Yes. Oh, that's good points to round this section off. And there's also a lot of other misconceptions, I'm sure, but we'll move to the questions round. We've got a few questions already. Let me ask Jayanta. Jayanta Kalita says, "Hi, my question pertains to identity and indigeneity. A controversy broke out earlier this year after the central government expanded the definition of Sikkimese beyond indigenous Lepcha, Bhutia, and Nepali people by including descendants of old settlers living in Sikkim till 1975 in the Finance Act 2023. Could any of the speakers shed light on this issue? Thanks." I mean, I would give this, I suppose, to Naresh, but pretty much anyone who wants to weigh in on this, please unmute your mics and speak to Jayanta's question.
I'll go.
Yeah, for sure, Pema.
Yeah, so it was not the central government that initiated it. It was a Supreme Court case. And the Supreme Court passed a verdict in which it said that, yes, the old settlers, which is the Indian businessman community, should be included in, for the very specific task of getting income tax exemption. You see, Sikkim subjects. So it is Sikkimese is a broader term. So when the Income Tax Act was extended, when the direct taxes were extended to Sikkim, they said that Sikkimese will be exempted for incomes earned in Sikkim. And the Sikkimese is a footnote, there's an asterisk, and they define Sikkimese as people who were Sikkim subjects at the time of the merger. It was a kingdom, hence you had subjects, you didn't have citizens. So people who were subjects at the time of the merger are what, for the purpose of this act, are called Sikkimese, and they are exempted from paying income tax. And then the old settlers, like I said, who are primarily the business community of made up of Indian plainsmen, they had been lobbying for this demand for a long time. They were saying that we meet the criteria that was required to become a Sikkim subject. We remained Indian citizens, but we met the criteria of how long back you should have been in Sikkim and how long you should have been settled and things like that. And hence, we should also be extended the same exemptions. So this is something that had come up in my mind regarding what Naresh had presented as well with regard to Limbu. So I'll throw a question on his side as well. Is that this whole issue, this particular issue, I mean, it is not for us to question why people seek out these recognitions, but it is linked to privileges that you will enjoy by being recognized as something. So the business community for the longest time had no issues of being recognized as Sikkimese. They were kept out of everything that were exclusively available for Sikkimese, right? Like owning land. Those who did not take Sikkim subject, that is, they could not own land. They could not, all the government benefits that went to the Sikkimese people did not go to them. Reservation in higher education, where Sikkim had quotas in colleges all over the country, their children did not get it. But this became an issue when the income tax exemption came. And they said, okay, this is something really concrete. And then they lobbied for it, went to the Supreme Court, they won the case, and it came to them. So that is how that is. So it was not so much an identity thing as the privilege that it draws, which is what is, I would like, maybe Naresh could come in later, are these and maybe in the rest of the Northeast also, I don't really know how it works, but in the rest of the Northeast as well, do the ideas of identity politics, especially, do they get fanned when they are actually privileges that come with it, right? When you want to become tribal, not because you are a tribal, but more because scheduled tribes have a quota, right?
Right.
15% reservation. I'm lobbying for that 15% reservation, and not really, I mean, otherwise, if there was no quota, why would I want the world to know whether I'm a tribal or not? That's for me to claim and identify as. So whether
Okay.
it is so much issues of identity, or is it just like the privileges that come with certain recognitions?
That's a
Can I?
detailed That's a detailed answer. Naresh, before you get in your response, I'll come back to you at some point. I want to club a question that I think you might be able to answer. So I'll come back to you later. But I also want to bring in people who haven't spoken in a while. So, Mayalmeet, I'm going to add a question of my own. Okay. So, once upon a time, we were told that there were tribal people in India. Then someone came and told us, when I say us, I mean journalists. They say, why are you using the word tribal? Use the word Adivasi. Okay, so we started using the word Adivasi. And then someone came and said, why are you using Adivasi? Because it's Adivasi in one part of India, but in another part of India, you can't use the word Adivasi. It's wrong. Then someone else came and said, why don't we use the word indigenous, as opposed to anything else? So I thought I'll ask you that question as to how view this khichdi of terms that we tend to use, and what is appropriate in a Sikkim context and what is not.
Uh, like I've learned this the word indigenous was like the Supreme Court verdict regarding R.C. Powell case. He has given that the Lepchas are indigenous people of Sikkim and other thing. So this tribal word is like, when we got ST status, like ST status, when Bhutia Lepcha we got ST, we did not demand for it. We were like the criteria for ST status, we got with the criteria. We did not demand like other rest of the like tribe they are demanding. So, but I like, a little bit like uh feeling like I think this is just like you said, some people like to have Adivasis and indigenous, but now the thing with Sikkim is like for literature especially, we are made primitive now. So like I think this policymakers is like, but I feel like since lecture community has got like we got like Bhutia lecture have a different reservation like political reservations and even in terms of jobs and all. But after that in 2006 I think we got primitive tribe. That is where like I was against this word, this primitive, because we are not getting anything. Like it has, the reservation has gone down to 5. What is happening in my community when I'm talking, when jobs comes, so we are not just focusing the BL that we have a reservation, but we are focusing in where we are getting a very less reservation as primitive. Instead of we are going like advancing, I feel like we are going back. And I don't think so. Like primitive that has been given by the government of state of like Sikkim is not even act. So like they are just playing. I feel like personally I feel is like they are dividing, and that is how it is playing. Actual, even if you see Adivasi or indigenous or whatever, we are not getting any concrete what the community should be getting. So this is what I really wanted to keep it in the
Got it.
forum.
That
Yeah.
is valuable perspective. Thank you for that. Let's ask, there are a few more questions coming in. Please ask your questions. We're going to stop this conversation soon. I want to do a time check. We have about, I think, 10 minutes. We'll try to finish things off. Thanks for the generosity of your time, all the speakers, and also for those of you for sticking around. So 2 questions come in by Prem. What is the objective of this roundtable? A bit of light into boom. And then there's a second question. What is the response reaction of the Sikkimese public Now, this second part of the question, I would like our guests to read, our guest speakers to read, and see if you want to answer it. Okay, so the question is, what is the response reaction of Sikkimese public with regards to a possibility of separate state merging Sikkim, North Bengal, and areas around, perhaps making this a new region as a union territory, for example? So this is a speculative question someone has asked, Prem. While you think about it, I think Naresh has lifted his hand, but let me just also answer the first part of the question, which is, what is the objective of this roundtable? I mean, the objective of this round. So let me tell you the story of why we are doing this in the first place and who we are, because that's a question you've explicitly asked us. So Boom is a fact-checking organization, and fact-checking as in kind of industries really sprung up around 2016 with the election of Donald Trump as the president of the United States then. And then everyone woke up. That was also a time 5 years after social media had entered our lives. Honeymoon period was over with social media. And everyone realized that there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of disinformation flying around. And you can't really trust everything that finds its way to your phone. So it literally it became kind of like overnight, it became a specialized profession. So we are all journalists who specialized in fact checking and the adjacent areas around fact checking, like media literacy, which is what my focus area is. Now, what happened was 2023 last year, when the whole Manipur violence erupted, and we had to fact check some information. And so we started calling people and we sent reporters to Manipur to find out, what to publish, what not to publish. And each time we found someone giving us a corroboration for some information, someone would say, how can you trust this person? They belong to this community. They have vested interest. So when we internally, we realized that when it comes to other parts of India, like let's say central India is another area that we don't know very well, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and eastern part of Madhya Pradesh, eastern part of Maharashtra, northern part of Telangana. So some parts of Orissa, we don't know that area very well, but we have a rule of thumb to understand. We have frameworks to understand. We can do an okay, decent job of it. But when it came to the Northeast, we just didn't understand the terrain at all. And then we saw an opportunity. We thought, hey, you know what? The rest of mainland India and perhaps the rest of the world does not understand Northeast India well. So why don't we try and do something? Why don't we try and fix that? And one way we do that is by holding events like this, doing roundtables. And I don't know about anyone else, if it's helped anyone else, but it has helped me appreciate the immense diversity in the northeastern part, and it has taught me many things. So I feel that anyone who's been watching been part of these roundtables, and there have been quite a few who have been part of these roundtables and who have followed us from one roundtable to another. I think our understanding of the region has become enriched. So that's really the story behind Boom. So yeah, that question, this speculative question, who wants to take that? I really would prefer people who have not spoken a lot. So let's go to Naresh. But Naresh, I would like to pack in everything you want to say so that I can go to other people. Okay.
Sure. I have another response, which I'm supposed to give it to Pema sir also. Can I continue?
Yes,
I'll continue with the North Bengal thing first, and then I'll come to the Sikkim and identity politics. The first thing, when it comes to that merger, no, it's a kind of merger that to bring some sort of UT or something like that. See, we are in a democratic country. You have to think that way only. These are the policy and the decision making that we're supposed to think. So even if you see the hypothetical situation that you merge with Sikkim, then these are the major thing that keeps flying around in social media also. But to be very honest, if Darjeeling wants to be part of Sikkim as a new UT, I don't know what sort of thing, but the problem with them will be, since in Sikkim itself, there are difference between Sikkim subject, residential, and the old settler. There are already, we discussed about, Pema sir also highlighting about all this kind of thing. So in that sense, Sikkim won't compromise its own state to become a UT, because we have a privilege of having Sikkim subject. So if they are willing to come, then they might become second citizenship within the state. So that is one problem. Another thing is these are the certain like legislative thing that democratic process has to go through. See, it is not, it is otherwise, Gorkhaland is supposed to be the one of the issue that they are supposed to get. They are fighting for so many years and still they're not achieving. And this having this kind of ideas is, I think this is almost next to impossible. So that is my response for that particular question. Another thing is when I was talking about the identity politics and how the historical misinterpretation and understanding has given no certain people in a particular privileged class and not. That's why I was pointing before that when during political officer come up with one particular this thing council also, and then that's how the migration happened in Sikkim also. So in counter to, because that is totally to counter with the Chogil, so the king of Sikkim, and the Chogil brought this revenue order number 1 in 1897. Then we were Chong, but anyway, the tragedy with our community is that being part of signatory of this Lomen Chong Sum, so-called one of the that is the only treaty that defines Sikkim as a one nation state, as a monarchy. So still we're actually we backlog on that also. So that is how our identity has been freed. And this is not when I'm talking about Eastern Himalayas, it happens similarly, it happens. That's why I was talking about the timeline, the Kipot system. We used to have land rights, now we don't have. So that is one area. And I'll just focus about the privilege thing, the ST as a privilege. Since when we deals about ST in case of Northeast, then it should not be seen as the same like one size fit all. India is such a diverse country. We should not think in the same line, because rest of India there are different ways of understanding as ST, tribal scheduled tribe. But especially for Northeast, let me be very in a simple word, it's a kind of privilege only, because for example, Bhutias are supposed to be from the king lineage, right? In that particular constitutional term, so-called, the people who comes from, they put certain criteria or the baggage when they say scheduled tribe also. So this is mostly political term, political privilege that people are getting, especially. That's why the very case of Manipur also, why Meiteis wants to become ST. They are the ruler. So this is a political privilege. Then, so we have to understand ST, especially in the Northeast context, in a different way, and the other rest of India in a different way. That is how we can also understand. So there are lots of politics behind that also. So that much I want to comment. But there is a limitation of time also. So otherwise we could have discussed more.
No,
Thank
you've
you so
given
much.
us opening. You've given us an opening to understand it. So at least the doorway is open to understanding. I want to get comments from all our speakers who have not yet spoken, but there are two questions we have not answered. One is Sona Rai, sorry, says, I wanted to ask the question to anyone who wishes to answer. While talking about the issue of marginality in Sikkim, the discourses that are dominant are usually about the issue of marginalization of domiciled Sikkimese communities. However, with the passage of time, there are increasingly new marginalities being produced inside Sikkim, which privilege the domiciled over the non-domiciled. When will we start addressing these concerns? Now, this is an important question, but I will ask our panelists to see if they can type out an answer, because I want to go to Kailash and ask Angana Chakrabarti's question to Kailash. Angana asks, going beyond the hydel power projects, how can we critically examine the rampant and unplanned infrastructure growth in Sikkim in depth? As journalists, where can we start to investigate the potential political and economic interests driving these developments? If you can give a quick answer, Kailash, that will be great.
Okay, so firstly, I think as a journalist, I would, we follow the money. Like, where is, so who are the people who are making, we are talking about the big developments. I'm presuming there's the hotel industry where there's a lot of like construction which is happening. There's also the hydropower projects themselves, but there's the pharmaceuticals have come up. So the way that I see it, that to where things are happening is again like the pharmaceuticals came up Not because there was like raw material for the pharmacies in Sikkim. It came up as a subsidized kind of for the pharmaceuticals, where there were like tax holidays, there were like subsidies for electricity, for transportation. So in a way, I think things are happening in Sikkim. Like the casinos are a big thing in Sikkim. Okay, like you people who don't know about Sikkim. So Sikkim, because of 371F, we have a fair amount of autonomy in terms of some of the internal decisions, I think. And therefore, a lot of loopholes which are kind of can be exploited, or not loopholes, but like, yeah, these tax holiday kind of like these kind of things kind of attract like these big money. The hydropower projects was a separate case, I'd say. Like, Sikkim is one of the most, I think, feasible places for hydropower. So that attracted a lot of potential developers. But that was also in a way fraught. Like that's also when the big ticket corruption started in Sikkim, that I think the government realized that, that the commissions like that they could get on these huge projects were like massive. So there were like no tenders. Like, you'd be surprised, like for the hydropower projects, for the big any of the hydropower projects, there was no like tendering at all. Like, so it was in a way a complete kind of in my mind, it was we just kind of like squandered golden opportunity for everything. So in a way, it becomes a place to exploit. I think that's where the big money is coming. Like,
I mean, follow the money is evergreen, but good advice, I guess, everywhere in all contexts. I think we'll wrap this up because we've been speaking for 90 minutes. And if anyone wants to say a quick bye or one final line that we're not able to speak, like Karma hasn't spoken in a while. I haven't called upon a few others as well.
Yeah. Can I make a point?
Yeah, quickly make the point, Ravi. Have you logged in on two separate devices, Rosie?
Hello.
See, I think there are two separate devices. If you can mute the other device, I think
Okay.
you're logged in twice. Let's while she sorts it out, Karma, just say what you want to say, concluding note, and then we'll bring in Rosie. Rosie, I think we need to mute one of your two accounts. Yeah.
I mean, nothing much. I just want to say thank you for getting us all together. I mean, it's a start. I know the objective is to know Sikkim, and I guess we've made a start by getting the right people together. That said, there's been a lot of talk about merging Sikkim 1, and there's also a lot of talk about domicile versus non-domicile. As somebody who's been outside and worked outside for a long time with an outside perspective, I just wanted to say that eventually all the rights and the privileges that the Sikkimese enjoy till today will slowly go away one day. That's a reality, and the people of Sikkim will have to accept it. It'll come in good time. But till then, I think the communities need to work together to protect their rights. Because, Venki, as I told you earlier, the picture on the ground is not rosy at all. The people of Sikkim still need help and still need aid. There are instances where land has been transferred for a few cases of rum. You know, I have seen and witnessed this incident myself. So that's why the people of Sikkim still needs protection, still needs hand holding for some time. I mean, if you do what others are expecting you to do, because there is a force from the outside that wants the domicile to be gone, that wants all the privileges and the rights that the Sikkimese enjoy gone. They want to be able to buy land in Sikkim. If you do that, then the state, which is already overrun, will finally be finished. The culture will be finished. The people of Sikkim will be finished. And I mean, then you are looking at, so I think you need more time for people to grow, and even something as simple as saving, for the future. That's not there in, culture of many of the Sikkimese people. They just earn today, eat today, finish today. They get some money today, they'll go to a showroom and buy a car, which is an instance in most parts of the Northeast, and so that tendency, so you need time for this, place to develop and the people to grow.
Right. Thanks for that, Karma. Let's bring in Rosie. Rosie, I hope you've sorted out the mic situation.
I don't know, I'm having some problem. Is my voice echoing?
Yes, because you are logged in on 2 devices.
Yeah, can you mute?
Am I audible now?
Hi, Rosie. You'll have to unmute one device and the other one should be on mute.
Can we can you just log out of one of your accounts? You've logged in twice. One, it says HP, and the other one, it says your name, Rosie. So if you log out of HP, then can you type it? Anyway, I would like to
Yeah.
look in here for about 94
It's
minutes.
okay. I'll just put in my observation in my chat box.
Please do, please do. As she is typing in her observations, let's thank everybody. I mean, I wish we had a little time more to talk about many of these aspects, but you've been very generous with your time, the speakers as well as the attendants. So thank you very, very much. And we will continue to have this conversation. I view this as a conversation anyway the Sikkimese have been having, and we've entered it briefly, and we are now exiting, but the conversation continues. And we will re-enter and we will try to learn more about Sikkim going forward and see if we can put together a learning resource as well. So that is the intention. Let's see if it works out. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we can stop recording.